A long time ago, in a kingdom hardened by steel and bloodshed, there lived a master blacksmith whose name carried weight across the land. His forge never cooled. Day and night, flames roared while molten iron bent to his will. Inside his shop hung rows of finely crafted swords, spears, armor sets, and shields, each piece so expertly made that nobles and commanders competed to purchase them. Wealth flowed into his coffers in staggering amounts. Fortune favored him when the kingdom of Cairo plunged into war. Armies required weapons in massive quantities, and the blacksmith secured an exclusive contract to supply them. His blades cut down enemies on distant battlefields, and his armor protected generals who led charges beneath crimson banners. When the war finally ended, the king rewarded him with a noble title. He was elevated to baron and granted dominion over a stretch of land. From that day forward, he was no longer merely a craftsman, he was a lord. That land, passed down through generations, now belonged to his descendants. Seated in a lavish chamber of the Dmitri estate, a young man named Roman listened as an elderly retainer retold that familiar tale. The old man spoke with pride, describing the glory of their lineage. Behind Roman stood a servant with a thick mustache, arms folded, wondering why his master was listening so intently to a story every child in the territory had memorized. Roman's gaze was distant, unfocused. He asked quietly, "So you're saying I am oldest Dimitri's son, and this is the kingdom of Cairo, on the Salamander continent? And the world called Murim does not exist?" The servant blinked in confusion. Of course Murim did not exist. What strange question was that? He studied Roman's face carefully. Though Roman had never been known for brilliance, this expression was new. Clear. Sharp. Almost unsettling. Had someone slipped him something? It was said that wealthy heirs sometimes indulged in exotic substances. Before the servant could speak further, he informed Roman that his fiancée, a noble lady from the Lawrence family, would be visiting that day. The Lawrence family valued refinement and decorum. Roman must present himself properly. Yet Roman cut him off. "There is something more urgent," he said firmly. "Take me to the elder." The servant hesitated. A meeting with Lady Lawrence should have been Roman's greatest concern. After all, Roman Dmitri was notorious within noble circles. Unlike his capable brothers, he had secluded himself inside his chambers for 25 years, rarely stepping beyond the estate walls. Many called him the fool of the Dmitri family. But Roman insisted. The Lawrence lady, he claimed, was insignificant compared to understanding how to survive in this world. Reluctantly, the servant complied. When they met the elder of the territory, Roman listened carefully to every word about the kingdom's laws and customs. Afterward, he thanked the elder and promised a reward. The old man bowed deeply, saying it was already an honor to speak with him. As they walked away, Roman whispered his name under his breath. Not Roman Dmitri. His true name was Byung Hyak. In another existence, he had stood at the summit of Murim as the feared Sky Demon sect leader. He had clawed his way to supremacy through endless battles, defeating hundreds, thousands, of challengers. Having achieved absolute power, he had accepted death without regret. And yet, he had awakened in this foreign body. Was this the will of heaven? Or punishment for rejecting ascension? His thoughts were interrupted by screams. In a crowded street ahead, 3 men surrounded a young boy. One kicked him violently in the head. Blood splattered across the dirt as the boy struggled to breathe. The attackers wore tattoos of red fangs on their shoulders. Hans, the mustached servant, recognized the mark immediately. "They're the blood fangs," he whispered urgently. "Loan sharks. They operate across our lands and beyond. That boy must owe them money." Hans suggested they ignore it. Such matters were common. But Roman was already moving. He stepped forward and ordered the men to stop. The bandits stared, stunned. One spat at the ground. "Roman Dmitri? You think being a noble means you can interfere?" Another mocked him openly. "Get lost before you embarrass yourself." Hans hurried forward, bowing and urging Roman to retreat. The blood fangs were dangerous. Roman silenced him. "I need to understand the law," Roman said calmly. "Who has broken it?" Hans stammered. Technically, the boy owed a debt. But the blood fangs had no authority to dispense punishment. Worse, they had shown blatant disrespect to the eldest son of the Dmitri clan. That alone could warrant execution under territorial law. The bandits laughed. Roman picked up a sturdy wooden stick from the roadside. "As the eldest son of Lord Romero Dmitri," he declared, "I will uphold justice." Steel flashed as the bandits drew their blades. The largest of them swung first. Roman moved with terrifying precision. He slipped past the arc of the sword as if the attack were slow and predictable. In a single fluid motion, he drove the wooden stick forward. It pierced through the man's throat. The sound that followed was wet and choking. Blood poured down the stick as the bandit collapsed, clutching at the wound in disbelief. The remaining two attacked simultaneously. Roman's movements were economical, lethal. He sidestepped one blade, swept the attacker's legs from under him, and plunged the stick into his chest with crushing force. Ribs cracked. The man fell limp. Hans watched, frozen in horror. This could not be the timid master he had known. The final bandit tried to flee. Roman seized him by the hair and dragged him back. The man screamed for mercy. To maintain order, Roman said coldly, the law must be enforced. He did not kill him, but he inflicted a punishment severe enough to leave a lasting reminder. Blood pooled at their feet as Roman released him. Turning to the stunned crowd, Roman spoke clearly. My name is Roman Dmitri. If any of you object to the judgment I pass today, you may bring your grievance to me directly. Silence answered him. In that moment, whispers spread like wildfire. The fool of the Dmitri family had vanished. That same day, memories surfaced of the bodies past. The kingdom of Kyra frequently conscripted one representative from each noble family during wartime. Roman Dmitri had been chosen to serve. Terrified of battle, he had taken his own life. But the soul now inhabiting that body was no coward. Byung Hyak, former Sky Demon sect leader, had conquered mountains of corpses to stand at the peak of Murim. When the rivers of blood once flowed beneath his feet in another lifetime, the entire martial world acknowledged the dominance of the Sky Demon sect. In Murim, supremacy had not been declared through titles but through corpses. When mountains of challengers fell, the world bowed. Now, standing in a dusty street of an unfamiliar kingdom, Roman Dmitri looked down at his blood-soaked hand. It had taken him noticeable effort to eliminate 3 mere street thugs. That fact disturbed him more than the violence itself. He turned sharply to Hans. Summon the guards. Report everything that happened here. Have them investigate the blood fangs thoroughly. Hans stared at him, stunned into silence for a moment, before scrambling to obey. Why yes, master. He hurried off in the direction of the estate guards. Left alone, Roman flexed his fingers. This body was painfully weak. The circulation of vital energy was almost non-existent. Its meridians felt clogged and brittle, like rusted pipes. In Murim, even an average martial artist would possess more internal force than this vessel. He needed information. And he needed to strengthen this body immediately. A shaky voice interrupted his thoughts. Sir? Roman turned. The boy who had been beaten by the bandits was staggering toward him, barely able to remain upright. Blood still trickled down his temple. Thank you, for saving me, the boy said, bowing as much as his injured state allowed. Roman studied him for a moment. You misunderstand, Roman replied calmly. I did not act for your sake. They violated the laws of this land. I punished them accordingly. The boy flinched. You will report everything truthfully, Roman continued, his tone cold but measured. Do not attempt to conceal anything. If you lie, your fate will not differ from theirs. If you value your tongue, use it carefully. The threat was not loud, but it was unmistakable. The boy swallowed and nodded quickly. I understand. He hesitated before speaking again. My name is Kevin. Roman waited. Kevin explained that his parents had borrowed money from the blood fangs to purchase farmland. The harvest would have been enough to repay the debt easily. But before the crops could be sold, the blood fangs destroyed the entire field. They burned everything, Kevin said, his fists trembling. We couldn't repay them after that. His voice cracked. I later found out, they did it on purpose. They said the debt could be forgiven if my little sister went with them. He dropped to his knees, tears mixing with blood and dirt. It's not fair. They never listened to us. Please, at least save my sister. Roman's eyes narrowed. There was something in the boy's gaze. Desperation, yes, but beneath it, a flicker of madness. A ferocity born from helplessness. It reminded him of one of the 4 heavenly kings he once faced in Murim, a man called the Mad Demon, whose hatred had sharpened him into a blade. Roman crouched slightly. What is your name? He asked again, more formally. Kevin, the boy repeated. Roman stood. I will verify your claims. Afterward, I will decide how to proceed regarding today's events. Kevin bowed repeatedly. Thank you, Lord Roman. As Roman walked away, an inexplicable feeling tugged at him. Perhaps it was instinct sharpened by countless battles, but something suggested this encounter would not repeat itself. As though their paths would never cross again. The scene shifted. A carriage rolled steadily along a wide road leading toward the Dmitri territory. Inside sat a young noblewoman, Lady Flora of the Lawrence family. Lady Flora, her attendant said softly, we will soon arrive at the lands of the Dmitri household. Flora nodded. So I will finally meet Roman Dmitri. Her tone was calm, but her fingers tightened around her dress. 1 month earlier? Inside the Lawrence estate, voices had echoed through a grand hall. A political marriage with the Dmitri family has been arranged. Flora had stared at her father in disbelief. That's impossible. Her father's face was drawn with exhaustion. Our territory is vulnerable. We are surrounded by rivals. An alliance with the Dmitri family is our only path to stability. You want me to marry into that household? She demanded. Into a family where the eldest son is known as a fool? Her father looked away. I am sorry, but I have no other choice. Flora felt her world collapse in that moment. She had once imagined marrying someone capable, perhaps even the second son of Dmitri, who had a promising future and a respectable reputation. Instead, she was to wed Roman Dmitri, a man infamous for idleness and indulgence. Rumors painted him as someone who rarely left his room, someone living purely for personal pleasure. When her carriage finally arrived at the Dmitri estate, Flora stepped out with rigid composure. Internally, she resolved to end this engagement immediately. She found Roman alone in a courtyard. I need to speak with you, she said firmly. About our marriage. Roman looked at her calmly. Yes? I believe it would be best if we cancel it. She expected outrage. Or at least wounded pride. Instead, Roman exhaled softly. That is acceptable. Flora blinked. What? I have heard much about this arrangement, Roman said evenly. Frankly, I do not understand why someone like me would dare to marry someone of your standing. Canceling it benefits us both. She stared at him, trying to determine whether he was mocking her. You're serious? I am. Roman turned as if the matter were settled. I will inform my father. Wait. Flora hurried after him. I heard that you were the one who insisted on this marriage. And now you want to withdraw without explanation? Roman stopped and faced her. Do you wish to marry me? Flora hesitated only briefly. No. Excellent, he replied. Then we are in agreement. I will take full responsibility. You need not worry about your reputation. They already call me the fool of the Dmitri family. Adding another insult will not change much. He walked away, leaving Flora frozen in confusion. Was this truly the same Roman Dmitri everyone ridiculed? Moments later, Roman entered his father's chamber. The head of the Dmitri family sat behind a large desk, reviewing documents. When Roman announced his intention to cancel the engagement, the room exploded. Have you lost your mind? His father roared. Roman stood straight. I have already discussed it with Lady Flora. We both agree. His father's face turned red with fury. You incompetent child. Despite the insults thrown at you, I still tried to salvage your position. This marriage with the Lawrence family would strengthen our standing among the nobility. All you had to do was marry her. Roman bowed his head. I apologize. The apology only enraged him further. You think sorry is enough? In a burst of anger, his father hurled a glass across the room. It struck Roman's forehead, shattering. Blood trickled down his face. If everything had gone smoothly, his father continued through clenched teeth, our family's influence would have expanded. Romero Dimitri's temper had not cooled. If this marriage had succeeded, he said bitterly, staring at the broken shards of glass on the floor, I could have repaired some of the disgrace attached to your name. But now? In 6 months, you will be sent to the battlefield as our family's representative. And you go there with nothing, no alliances, no standing. Blood trickled from Roman's forehead, sliding past his eyebrow. He did not bother to wipe it immediately. Romero narrowed his eyes. There is something else. I've heard rumors. They say you confronted the Blood Fangs today. That you punished them. He let out a harsh laugh. Who would believe that? My son defeating the Blood Fangs? Someone must have intervened. His tone hardened. You don't understand the gravity of this. The Blood Fangs are not street vermin I can simply crush. They've grown powerful, entrenched. Even I cannot move against them without consequence. He leaned forward. You chose to involve yourself. So from now on, you bear the responsibility. You failed in your duty today. Whatever follows, you will handle it yourself. Romero expected tears. Perhaps a desperate plea. Instead, Roman answered evenly, understood. I will resolve it. His father blinked. What did you say? It was my action, Roman continued. Then the burden is mine. I will return once it is settled. For a moment, Romero did not recognize the young man standing before him. Something in Roman's posture, his composure, felt foreign. Wait, Romero called out instinctively. But Roman had already turned away. Outside the chamber, he pulled a handkerchief from his pocket and wiped the drying blood from his temple. Flora was waiting in the corridor. Have you lost your senses? She demanded quietly. The Blood Fangs aren't petty criminals. They terrorize even nobles. If you provoke them further, they won't forgive it. Roman glanced at her. Why are you still here? She faltered. I heard what happened. If you apologize to your father, this can still be contained. Without your family's backing, you can't handle them alone. Roman studied her expression. Why concern yourself with this? He asked. Flora opened her mouth to answer, but he cut her off. Lady Flora, you overstep. Her eyes widened. Once you proposed ending the engagement, he continued calmly, you forfeited any right to interfere in my decisions. I was only. You were worried, he finished. Yet when I agreed to take full responsibility, you doubted my sincerity. She fell silent. Roman's gaze sharpened. From the moment we agreed to part ways, our paths separated. Do not involve yourself in my affairs, and I will not involve myself in yours. He began walking away. The only reason I accepted blame publicly, he added without turning, was to prevent idle gossip that might damage you. Not because I seek any connection. Flora remained where she stood, unsettled. The man she had expected to be foolish and indulgent spoke with unsettling clarity. Elsewhere in the estate, in a richly furnished room heavy with the scent of alcohol, Roman Dmitri sat with a glass in hand. Across from him was his wife, Lyona. You've had enough, she said gently. Romero exhaled. I raised my hand against him again. Lyona's expression softened. When we were still commoners, Romero murmured, staring into his drink, I was harsh with Roman. Those were difficult years. Hunger, debt, humiliation. He endured all of it with me. He closed his eyes briefly. After we were granted nobility, I swore I would never treat him that way again. Yet here I am. Lyona embraced him lightly. Despite everything, our other children grew into capable adults. That is not solely your fault. Romero shook his head. Roman is different. He alone remembers those years beside me. And I no longer know how to guide him. Lyona pressed a kiss to his temple. You are not a cruel man. The Roman Dmitri I know would never abandon his son. There is still time to mend this. She hesitated. About the blood fangs. Roman is proud. He likely acted impulsively. Romero's jaw tightened. And if I ignore it? What happens when they retaliate? Then seek help, she urged. Ask Captain Jonathan. Romero's eyes sharpened. You're right. He suddenly raised his voice. Someone. A servant rushed in. Summon Captain Jonathan at once, Romero ordered. Meanwhile, on the outer grounds of the estate, Hans trailed behind Roman anxiously. Master, it is dangerous to walk outside right now. We don't know when the blood fangs might retaliate. Perhaps we should remain inside until this blows over. Roman slowed and looked at him. Hans, he asked, how do you think the blood fangs gained the influence they now wield? Hans blinked. I'm not certain. They built it on notoriety, Roman replied. A man kills an enemy and flees. Word spreads. Fear grows. Once fear takes root, it compels obedience. He continued walking. Notoriety breeds fear. Fear breeds control. Hans swallowed. Then shouldn't we avoid provoking them further? Roman's eyes were steady. If fear sustains them, he said quietly, then breaking that fear will unravel them. In his previous life, countless sects had risen the same way, through spectacle and brutality. And countless had fallen when confronted by someone who did not yield. The blood fangs were no different. They simply did not realize it yet. Hans frowned, still struggling to grasp Roman's reasoning. So, they're still dangerous, aren't they? He asked carefully. Roman gave a faint smile. At the moment? Yes. They are capable of making me cautious. That was all he said. Later, they sat inside a crowded restaurant near the marketplace. The air was thick with overlapping conversations, clinking cups, and the scent of roasted meat. Servants moved swiftly between tables. A waitress approached and set down the dishes Hans had ordered. It's what you requested, she said politely. Hans beamed at the sight of the food, his earlier tension briefly forgotten. Roman, however, rose from his chair. You may remain here and eat, he said calmly. I'll step out for a while. Hans froze. What? Roman glanced at him. This is precisely what I meant earlier. I won't allow it. Hans stood abruptly, nearly knocking over his chair. Even if I put myself in danger, I cannot send you out alone. Roman studied him in silence for a moment. Hans, he asked quietly, are you truly one of my people? The question struck Hans like a blow. Of course I am, he answered immediately, almost offended. Then stay, Roman replied. Do not throw your life away unnecessarily. You have already done more than enough simply by standing beside me in the street earlier. He adjusted his sleeves. I will return shortly. Hans could only watch as Roman walked toward the exit. To think. Master would say such words to him. Before Hans could follow, the tavern door felt strangely resistant, as though the air itself had grown heavy. He hesitated, unease creeping into his chest. If something happened, he would have no choice but to report everything. Outside, Roman moved through dimly lit streets with measured steps. Over the past few days, he had observed the blood fangs carefully. Their strength was undeniable, but they operated in scattered cells. Small units. Difficult to track. If he searched for them directly, they would vanish. More likely, they were watching him. Perhaps they hesitated because they feared failure. If they struck and failed to kill him, their reputation would suffer. Then he would give them no room for hesitation. Tonight was the estate's scheduled night drill. Many of the territorial guards were occupied with routine training outside the city walls. Patrols within the town were thin. If the blood fangs wanted retaliation, tonight was ideal. Roman had walked openly through the streets for that very reason. Footsteps sounded behind him. 3 figures in dark robes emerged from the shadows, blades already drawn. Without warning, one lunged forward. "This is the blood fang's vengeance," he shouted. Roman did not flinch. The knife thrust toward his chest, but Roman caught the attacker's wrist mid-strike. In the same motion, he drove his elbow sharply into the man's abdomen. The air left the thug's lungs in a violent gasp. "You," the attacker tried to curse. Roman twisted his arm until bones strained and fingers loosened. The blade slipped free. Roman seized it and, without hesitation, plunged it into the man's chest. The thug staggered backward, leaving smeared footprints of blood across the stones before collapsing. The remaining 2 froze. "What the hell?" one muttered. "This isn't what we were told," the other said, panic rising in his voice. They had been informed Roman Dmitri was weak, useless. Roman smiled faintly. "Why have you stopped?" he asked. "Come." He beckoned them forward with a casual curl of his fingers. At that very moment, Hans burst into the estate's training grounds, breath ragged. "Captain! Captain Jonathan!" Captain Jonathan turned sharply at the commotion. "What is it?" he demanded. Hans struggled to speak. "Young master, he went into the city. Alone. To confront the blood fangs." The surrounding knights exchanged glances. Jonathan blinked, and then laughed. "That's absurd. Roman Dmitri? Fighting the blood fangs? I swear it's true." Hans insisted desperately. "Why would I lie about something like this? We must hurry." Jonathan's laughter faded slightly. He remembered Romero's earlier request, that he keep an eye on Roman due to a dispute with the blood fangs. He scratched the back of his head. Why would he even go there? He can barely hold a weapon properly. Still, caution prevailed. "Knights!" Jonathan barked. "Arm yourselves immediately." Steel rang as weapons were drawn and mounted soldiers prepared. Jonathan turned to Hans. "Lead us. Show us where he might be." Hans nodded vigorously. "As long as we're present," Jonathan declared confidently, "the blood fangs won't dare lay a hand on him." He did not yet know that by the time they arrived, the definition of danger might already have changed. As Captain Jonathan rode toward the city with his men, a troubling thought crossed his mind. If Hans was telling the truth, then Roman Dmitri had truly gone to confront the blood fangs alone. And if that was true, then either the young master had lost his senses, or something far stranger was happening. In a narrow alley not far from the marketplace, the remaining 2 blood fang thugs stared at the corpse of their companion. Blood pooled around the body, creeping between cracks in the stone. Roman stood before them, expression calm. "Why did you stop?" he asked lightly. The men trembled despite themselves. "Don't just stand there," one shouted at the other. "He's bluffing." They roared and charged together, blades raised high. The first attacker lunged recklessly. Roman sidestepped at the last instant and drove the stolen knife deep into the man's abdomen. The thug's eyes widened as the steel sank in. He collapsed forward, gasping. The last remaining bandit screamed in fury. "You bastard!" He leapt with wild desperation, swinging his blade downward. Roman retreated half a step, then snapped his foot forward in a brutal kick. The impact lifted the thug off his feet and hurled him several meters across the alley. He hit the ground hard, air knocked from his lungs. Roman approached him slowly. "What is this really about?" he asked. The bandit spat blood. "Kill me, and you'll never be safe again." Roman tilted his head slightly. "I have already killed 2 of you. What difference would a third make?" The man fell silent. Roman crouched and pressed the blade against the thug's thigh. "Bandits are known for loose tongues," he said evenly. "Answer wisely." When the thug hesitated, Roman drove the knife into his leg. A scream tore through the alley. "Who is your leader?" Roman asked. Not long after, Roman stepped onto a busier street lined with taverns and shops. Evening crowds drifted lazily between establishments. Laughter and drunken chatter spilled from an open bar. Inside, men raised mugs in animated conversation. One of them stopped mid-sentence. Roman had entered. His clothes were stained with dust and faint streaks of blood. His right hand was still marked red. The bartender turned with a practiced smile. "Welcome." He froze. "Why, young Master Roman," he corrected himself stiffly. Whispers spread through the room. "That's Roman Dmitri. Why is he here?" Roman walked to the counter. "What will you have?" the bartender asked cautiously. "Tear of Dawn," Roman replied. The bartender's face tightened. "We don't carry that." Roman gave a soft sigh. "Then something stronger. I have work to do in the morning." Several patrons exchanged glances. The thug Roman had interrogated had revealed a detail: the blood fangs used coded phrases. Tear of Dawn was a signal. If followed by a request for something stronger for the morning, it identified the speaker as someone sent by their network. The tavern fell unnaturally quiet. Behind the counter, the bartender slowly reached for a concealed knife. Without warning, he lunged. Roman's fist shot forward first. The punch landed squarely on the bartender's nose with a crack. He collapsed instantly. Chairs scraped. Steel flashed. "He's a monster," someone shouted. "Kill him." A thug rushed at Roman from the side. Roman caught him barehanded and slammed him face-first into a table. Wood splintered. Another swung a sword. Roman pivoted, seized the attacker's wrist, and hurled him into the door. The man crashed through it, spilling into the street outside. Panic erupted. Roman moved through them like a storm. His breathing was controlled, short, precise inhalations. Each breath circulated faint threads of energy through his damaged meridians. In Mirim, he had mastered a technique that amplified strength through rapid, controlled respiration, compressing internal force into explosive bursts. Even in this weakened body, fragments of that method remained. One by one, men fell. Two thugs hesitated at the back of the hall. "This can't be Roman Dmitri," one whispered. "We heard he was useless." Roman's foot lashed out. Both dropped before they could finish speaking. Moments later, the tavern floor was littered with unconscious or groaning figures. Only the bartender remained conscious, clutching his face. Roman approached him. "I was hoping for a conversation," Roman said calmly. The bartender stared up at him in terror, nose swollen and bleeding. "You attacked first," Roman continued. "That suggests you recognized the code." Before the bartender could answer, heavy footsteps pounded outside. Captain Jonathan burst in, sword drawn, only to stop short. The tavern looked like a battlefield. "Is this," he muttered, surveying the fallen men. "Was this done by the young master?" One of the soldiers shouted from the staircase. "Captain! There's a survivor upstairs." Jonathan hurried up. The trembling thug they found blurted out everything he knew. "The Bloodfang's main base, it's near the Lawrence district." "Lawrence?" Jonathan repeated, confused. "The old inn on the eastern road," the soldier clarified. "That's what he said." Meanwhile, at that very inn, morning sunlight filtered faintly through narrow windows. An innkeeper sat bound to a chair, wrists tied behind him. 2 fingers of his left hand were missing, crudely severed. Blood stained the floor. Across from him stood a man holding a pair of scissors, their blades glinting. "You drink too much courage," the torturer said with a thin smile. "But perhaps that is admirable." The innkeeper glared at him. "Kill me." The man chuckled. "You think the Bloodfangs won't avenge themselves? I should have ended you sooner." He leaned closer. "You know, I rather like stubborn men. The ones who endure torture without speaking. They usually hold the most valuable secrets." "Stop wasting time," the innkeeper rasped. "Just finish it." The Roman paused. His gaze shifted to a framed photograph lying on a nearby table. He picked it up. It showed the innkeeper beside a young boy. "Is it true," the man asked softly, "that you would remain silent until your last breath?" He tapped the image lightly. "What if we found this child? What if we decided to test your resolve by killing your son?" The innkeeper's composure cracked for the first time. Fury and fear flashed across his face. "That's not my son," he snapped. "Don't twist things." The Roman smiled slowly. "Who are you trying to deceive?" he asked. "We already know who you are. And who he is to you." The innkeeper's jaw tightened until his teeth creaked. "You're insane," he spat. "That noble brat is threatening my family? You think I'll bend because of that?" The man before him didn't react to the insult. He stepped closer, boots scraping softly across the floorboards. His expression remained almost conversational. "Recently," he said, "I learned something fascinating about the Bloodfangs." The innkeeper's defiance flickered. "They're not simply criminals chasing coin. For revenge, they would gladly throw away their own lives. Loyalty built on fear can be remarkably durable." He crouched so their eyes were level. "But here's what intrigued me. Most of their foot soldiers aren't monsters by nature. They're debtors. Men cornered by circumstances. They owe money, large sums. And the blood fangs don't just collect interest. The innkeeper's breathing grew shallow. They engineer crimes, the man continued evenly. Push people into impossible debt. Then offer salvation. Join us. Work for us. Obey. Refuse, and your wife disappears. Your child suffers an accident. A family is left on the brink of ruin. He let the words hang. They don't want repayment. They want slaves. The innkeeper trembled. Even if that's true, it changes nothing. The blood fangs always win. The man's gaze hardened. He dropped a small photograph at the innkeeper's feet, an image of a child smiling beside his father. I don't make idle threats, he said quietly. If you force my hand, I will let my men find the boy. I will kill him slowly. Painfully. I swear it on my name. He pressed his boot lightly onto the photograph. But I'm giving you a choice. Tears streamed down the innkeeper's face. Remain loyal to men who would sacrifice you without hesitation, and watch your son die for their cause. Or give me what I need. Help me cut out the rot at its root. The room fell silent except for the innkeeper's broken sobs. In a dim warehouse across town, several bandits gathered in agitation. Say it again, one demanded. A bruised scout swallowed. Roman Dmitri defeated an entire squad. Alone. Murmurs rippled through the room. If a knight from the Dmitri house has intervened, someone muttered, we're finished. From the center, seated upon a cracked stone chair like a crude throne, a gray-bearded man slammed his fist against the armrest. Rubbish, he roared. Roman Dmitri? The wastrel who avoided the Royal Swordsman Academy? He can't even hold a blade properly. Yet doubt crept into his thoughts. Where is he now? He left the city, the scout replied. The survivors said he forced information out of them. He's hunting us. Alone? Yes. The old man's face darkened. So he dares mock us. March into our territory without fear. He rose slowly. Gather everyone. If he thinks he can strike our bases one by one, we will crush him before he reaches another. We kill him first, before the Dmitri knights mobilize. The scout bowed deeply. At once. The leader's eyes burned. Roman Dmitri. You challenge the blood fangs? I'll hang your corpse in the town square. Let everyone see what happens to those who shame us. Far from the tension in the streets, the Barco estate hosted a heated council. Documents were spread across a long oak table. Ink-stained fingers tapped parchment. Voices overlapped in frustration. A red-haired nobleman cleared his throat. Rumor says our rivals have taken a massive loan from the gold bank. That scale of borrowing suggests only one thing, preparation for war. All eyes turned to the white-haired patriarch seated at the center. Beside him, a black-haired advisor added, the central government appears to support their claim. If matters continue, we risk losing half our fertile lands. An older noble pounded the table. Our family survives because of that soil. Without it, we're nothing. Arguments erupted. Our ancestors were granted that land legitimately. The documents say otherwise. They've conspired with the capital. The patriarch raised a hand. Silence gradually fell. We will not surrender a single acre, he said firmly. If we yield once, other houses will descend like scavengers. He folded his hands. That is why we secured an alliance with the Dmitri family. Murmurs shifted from anger to cautious optimism. The Dmitris are among the wealthiest in the northeast, someone said. Even if our enemies borrowed heavily, they cannot surpass Dmitri's coffers. The patriarch nodded slowly. I sent my only daughter there for a reason. A few offered reassurances. You acted for the family's survival. At that moment, the chamber doors opened. A young woman stood at the threshold, blonde hair tied neatly with a blue ribbon, matching her jacket and clear blue eyes. Flora hesitated, fingers tightening around the fabric of her sleeves. I broke off the engagement. Her heart pounded. She had convinced herself it was her life to choose. Yet now, facing the weight of her family's future, doubt gnawed at her resolve. How do I tell father that I cannot marry a man I do not respect? Before she could step forward, a soldier rushed toward her. Lady Flora, please step aside. She blinked. What is happening? He bowed quickly. Urgent news. Another guard shouted from the courtyard wall, young Master Roman is in danger. Her expression shifted. Roman? A second soldier sprinted up, breathless. Captain reports chaos in the square. There are riots, bodies in the streets. Outside the estate, townspeople gathered nervously, staring at a trail of blood leading toward an abandoned structure. Inside its basement, an elderly man was dragged by the collar, pleading for mercy. You said the noble boy would be easy, one thug sneered. The door at the far end creaked open. Dozens of armed bandits stood waiting in the shadows. Steel glinted in torchlight. On one man's shoulder, a massive tattoo of fang jaws stretched across scarred skin. They were prepared for an army. The cellar door groaned open. At the far end of the chamber, the old leader of the Blood Fangs stood behind a line of armed men. Torches flickered against damp stone walls, illuminating drawn swords and hardened faces. He had gathered nearly everyone left at his disposal. There was no possibility of defeat, at least, that was what he believed. "This is absurd," he muttered under his breath. He came alone. One man. His subordinates surged forward. What followed was not a battle. It was a collapse. Steel rang. Men shouted. Then the shouting turned into screams. Roman moved through them without hesitation, his movements efficient and unembellished. Each strike was decisive. Each step calculated. The old leader watched as bodies fell one after another. Confidence drained from his face. His hands began to tremble. Impossible. This can't be happening. Within minutes, the cellar was silent except for the wet sound of blood dripping onto stone. The old man's knees buckled. He dropped heavily to the ground, staring at the carnage around him. His men, his shield, his pride, were dead. Roman approached slowly, hands stained dark red. The leader's breath hitched. "I'm finished. He's going to kill me." "No, no," he whispered. "I don't want to die." The words repeated in his mind like a broken chant. As Roman stopped in front of him, the old man suddenly lunged, not to attack, but to cling. He grabbed Roman's leg, pressing his forehead to the bloodied boot. "Spare me," he sobbed. "I'll do anything. I'll serve you. I'll be your dog. Loyal, faithful, for the rest of my life." Roman looked down at him without emotion. "You should have chosen submission before you bared your fangs." He seized the man by the collar and dragged him across the stone floor. The leader screamed as his body scraped over debris and shattered wood. Moments later, he was hauled into the open air. Lawrence Square was crowded despite the late hour. Word of violence had spread. When Roman emerged, dragging the Blood Fangs leader behind him like discarded prey, the townspeople fell into stunned silence. Someone gasped. "That's him, the head of the Blood Fangs." The old man wailed, still pleading. "Mercy. I'll serve you. I swear it." Roman turned to face the crowd. "They tried to silence me," he said evenly. "They preyed on this town. Extorted its people. Threatened families to build their power." He looked down at the man groveling at his feet. "This ends now." A mounted knight pushed through the crowd. "Young master." Too late. Roman's boot struck. Bone cracked against stone. The leader's cries cut short as blood spread across the square. A final blow ended it. Silence fell again, thicker than before. The citizens stared at the corpse, then at Roman. Whispers spread like wildfire. "That's Roman Dmitri? The same wastrel? He wiped out the Blood Fangs, alone?" News traveled quickly to the Lawrence estate. In the manor's grand hall, a counselor struggled to believe the report. He dragged the man into the square and executed him publicly. "That is not delirium?" another asked. "No. Witnesses confirm it." The presiding baron leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. His first concern was not the brutality, but the authority. "He carried out an execution without my sanction," the corner judge remarked sharply. "That cannot be overlooked." The baron remained thoughtful. Was that truly the core issue? "Summon him," he ordered at last. "I will hear this directly." Roman entered the hall accompanied by several Dmitri knights, including Captain Jonathan. He offered a brief bow. "Dispense with formalities," the baron said. "Explain yourself." Roman spoke calmly. "A few days ago, the Blood Fangs assaulted an innocent citizen. I executed the offender immediately. In response, they attempted to eliminate me. I traced them to their main base and dealt with their leader." Murmurs erupted. "You had no right," a noble snapped. "This is Lawrence territory." "I am aware," Roman replied. However, the man's identity was no secret. His crimes were widely known. Yet he was repeatedly released on bail. The hall stiffened. "I concluded that the matter would not be resolved through ordinary channels." One knight bristled. "Watch your tone." "To be frank," Roman interrupted, "I am disappointed. I risked my life addressing a problem that festered under your governance. If I have erred, I ask plainly, what action had been taken prior?" The question lingered. The baron glanced at his advisors. One shifted uncomfortably. "We knew he was a criminal. We did not realize he commanded the entire organization." After a pause, the baron exhaled. "Very well. The matter ends here. Had we acted sooner, your intervention would not have been necessary. You will be rewarded at a later date. You may withdraw." Roman bowed once and left with the knights. When the doors closed, the baron tugged thoughtfully at his goatee. His assistant whispered, "My lord, we cannot simply ignore that he executed a man without permission. Of course we can, the Baron replied calmly. He will soon be my son-in-law. And today he demonstrated something invaluable. Boldness. Resolve. He allowed himself a small smile. I underestimated Roman Dmitri. Shall I summon Lady Flora? Yes. I believe she should hear this. Dusk settled as Roman and his men rode back through the estate gates. Captain Jonathan guided his horse closer. Young master, was it necessary to speak so bluntly to the Baron? Had he taken offense? Roman kept his gaze forward. We are not responsible for their negligence, he said. Everything that occurred was a consequence of their inaction. If they felt accused, it is because the truth unsettled them. As they rode back beneath the fading light, Captain Jonathan found himself studying Roman's back in silence. This isn't the Roman I knew, he thought. The young master's posture, his composure, even the weight in his gaze, it all felt foreign. It was as if another soul stood in that saddle. Long before he bore the name Roman Dmitri, he had been Baek Jung-hyuk, the son of the heavenly demon. He remembered the cave. It was a vast hollow carved into frozen stone, its floor hard as iron. 12 boys stood scattered across the cavern, bruised and bleeding. At the highest ledge, a towering figure looked down at them with indifference. If you wish to inherit my power, the heavenly demon had declared, crawl out of this pit alive. His voice carried no warmth. You are one of my 12 children. If you die, it is of no consequence. I can create more. The only proof of worth is dominance. Seize power, or be crushed. Moments later, Baek Jung-hyuk had been struck from behind and sent skidding across the ice. A larger boy sneered. The son of the heavenly demon? I expected more. You're nothing but arrogance. Fists. Kicks. Stones. When other children in the world defended their parents, Baek Jung-hyuk learned something different. Survival belonged to the strongest. He rose, blood in his mouth, and charged back, only to be thrown down again. Mockery followed. Present, the bathhouse. Steam curled through the air of the Dmitri estate's bath chamber. Roman leaned back in the hot water, eyes half-lidded. This body exhausted far too quickly. Since awakening in this unfamiliar world, he had faced ambushes, conspiracies, and the blood fangs. His former power was gone. His cultivation reduced to a fraction of what it once had been. He examined his hands beneath the water's surface. To dismantle the blood fangs, he had eliminated everything that obstructed him. There was no regret. His principles had not changed simply because the world had. Those who left him alone would live. Those who threatened him would be erased. Novel or reality, it made no difference. A servant's voice cut through the steam. Young master, the Lord requests your presence. Roman rose. I'll attend shortly. The Lord's reflection. In his study, the Lord of House Dmitri tapped his fingers against the desk. You're certain? He asked. Jonathan nodded. Yes, my lord. Young Master Roman has changed, significantly. The Lord leaned back, eyes clouded with thought. Roman had always been his greatest concern, the only son who showed no exceptional talent. The only one who disappointed him. Yet memory surfaced unbidden. A small boy once ran toward him, clutching a small paper bag. Father, I brought you candy. The Lord had frowned at the time. Didn't I tell you to stay away from my work? It's dangerous here. Roman had only smiled shyly. You look tired. I thought this would help you finish faster, so you can come home sooner. The recollection struck harder than any accusation. Had he overlooked something? Had he dismissed his son too quickly? When he heard that Roman had eradicated the blood fangs, something long dormant stirred, hope. Let him enter, the Lord ordered when informed of Roman's arrival. It doesn't matter how he did it, he thought. If he truly acted of his own will. Roman stepped into the chamber and clasped his hands respectfully. I heard you defeated the blood fangs alone, the Lord began. Explain. Roman weighed his options carefully. If he revealed the full truth of his abilities, scrutiny would follow. Expectations would grow. Attention could become dangerous. The rational choice was restraint. But the memory of that cave, of being told he was worth nothing, rose within him. Something changed the day he stopped enduring. One of the boys lunged at him. Jung-hyuk caught a rock from the frozen ground and drove it into the attacker's face. Once. Twice. Again and again until screams echoed through the cavern and blood coated the stone in his hand. The others froze. Jung-hyuk stood, breathing hard, his face expressionless. Tell them, he said coldly. This cave belongs to me now. From that day forward, he did not conceal his superiority. He embraced it. He was the son of the heavenly demon. And he ruled by strength. He opened his eyes. Yes. I did. The Lord stared. How is that possible? I have been training, Roman replied evenly. Improving my swordsmanship in private. Why hide it? If I had known. It was a difficult period, Roman interrupted calmly. I wish to prove that even the fool of House Dmitri could resolve matters without assistance. Silence filled the room. And the blood fangs? The Lord pressed. They were more than simple bandits. They operated as lenders, ensnaring debtors through intimidation. To destroy them, it was necessary to remove the root. I lured their leader into exposing himself. The Lord studied him in astonishment. You orchestrated it? Yes. There was no arrogance in his tone, only certainty. The Lord exhaled slowly. The training grounds. Later, beneath the blazing afternoon sun, young warriors of the estate trained with wooden swords. Dust rose with every clash. The Lord arrived with Roman at his side. Pay attention, a knight barked. Young Master Roman will demonstrate. Murmurs rippled through the trainees. Some looked skeptical. Others curious. One blonde youth frowned. Why pit us against him now? Roman, however, gazed up at the open sky, seemingly uninterested in their doubts. An hour earlier, he had stood before his father and claimed responsibility without hesitation. Roman listened without interruption as his father struggled to process what he had just heard. You deliberately made yourself bait? The Baron demanded. You exposed yourself, knowing they would come for revenge? Roman inclined his head slightly. The blood fangs value reputation above all else. If I publicly executed one of their men, they would have to respond. Pride would force their leader to act. The Baron rose from his chair, agitation breaking through his composure. That was reckless. What if they had chosen differently? What if they abandoned their leader and killed you instead? Criminal organizations are not bound by loyalty, they are bound by fear. The moment freedom becomes possible, men turn on their masters. Roman remained calm. Internally, he acknowledged the logic. In truth, that was precisely what had happened. Some among the blood fangs had wavered the instant their leader faltered. Yet Roman had calculated the risk. Pride and hierarchy had held them together long enough. Silence settled between father and son. The Baron studied him carefully. This requires courage and careful planning. After a long pause, he exhaled. I do not have words to express my pride, he said quietly. But I must see it with my own eyes. Roman raised his gaze. Show me your swordsmanship. I want to know how much you have changed. The training grounds. The estate's training yard buzzed with tension. Wooden practice swords were lowered as knights and trainees realized something unusual was unfolding. A knight announced loudly, Young Master Roman will spar. Any volunteer may step forward. No one moved. A few exchanged uneasy glances. One trainee muttered under his breath, why would anyone agree? If he wins, you gain nothing. If he loses, you're the fool who humiliated the Lord's son. The captain frowned. They needed someone capable, not merely to preserve the dignity of the knights, but to test Roman properly. If there are no volunteers, the captain said, I will select one. Several men stiffened. Among them stood a blonde knight in a green training jacket. His name was Chris, deputy captain of the Dmitri Knights. He felt the captain's gaze settle on him. Chris stepped forward. Murmurs spread immediately. This was no ordinary trainee. He was one of the estate's strongest swordsmen. Chris's memory. As he walked into the center of the yard, a memory surfaced unbidden. Last year, during a patrol near Augusta, he had received reports of a disturbance at a tavern. Upon arrival, he found the establishment wrecked, broken bottles, spilled food, terrified patrons. At the center of the chaos stood Roman Dmitri, drunk and unsteady. Come here! Roman had shouted, hurling a bottle against the wall. Do you know who I am? The tavern owner had pleaded for forgiveness. Chris had approached carefully, urging restraint. Roman had sneered and slapped him across the face. How dare you touch me? The impact had told Chris everything. The young master's body was soft, untrained, weak. His physical conditioning was inferior even to an average adult. Roman had continued boasting, about being a baron's son, about authority. Chris had left that day thinking one thing. I would rather die than become that kind of man. And now he was expected to duel him. The terms. Chris bowed slightly toward the captain. With permission, he said evenly, I request that this not be a symbolic exchange of wooden swings. I have trained for real combat. I do not intend to restrain myself unnecessarily. The implication was clear. If Roman wanted to prove himself, he would face genuine pressure. The captain hesitated, then looked toward the Baron. The Baron gave a single nod. Chris's eyes shifted to Roman. Roman smiled faintly. I agree. That calm expression irritated Chris more than any insult. The duel begins. The two men took their positions. On one side of the yard stood the Baron and the captain. On the other, rows of soldiers and trainees watched with sharpened attention. Ready, the captain called. Chris lowered his stance, anger simmering beneath his focus. Roman stood relaxed, sword held loosely but correctly. Begin. Chris launched forward in a burst of speed, blade cutting toward Roman's shoulder. Clang! Roman's sword met the strike cleanly. The sound of steel echoed across the yard. Several soldiers blinked in disbelief. That was fast. Chris's eyes widened slightly. The block had been precise, not desperate, not lucky. Controlled. He withdrew instantly and attacked again, this time feinting high and cutting low. Blocked. Roman's stance did not waver. Chris increased his tempo. A rapid sequence of strikes rained down, vertical, diagonal, thrust. Each one was intercepted. No wasted motion. No visible strain. Chris felt it then, the pressure when their blades crossed. Roman's grip was firm, his posture rooted. This was not the untrained body from the tavern. Is this coincidence? He pivoted, attempting to circle behind Roman for a rear thrust. Roman stepped forward instead of back, nullifying the angle. Chris's blade met empty air. A flicker of irritation crossed his face. He pressed harder, launching a direct thrust meant to force a reaction. Roman slipped aside by a fraction and countered in the same motion. The wooden practice blade sliced through the air and grazed Chris's hair, severing several strands. Chris leapt back instinctively. A murmur rippled through the spectators. That had been close, too close. The Baron and the captain both stared, stunned. Chris steadied his breathing. His pulse pounded, not from exertion, but from realization. Roman's movements contained no visible flaws. His evasion flowed seamlessly into defense, and defense into counterattack. There was structure to it, discipline. Chris clenched his jaw. If this is the man who destroyed the blood fangs. The thought no longer felt absurd. For the first time, Chris felt a surge of anxiety tightening in his chest. He was terrified of humiliating himself in front of the entire crowd. Before he could gather his thoughts, Roman calmly declared that the warm-up was over. The statement stunned his opponent. Determined to seize the initiative, he lunged forward first, slashing with his blade. Chris barely registered the movement. He instinctively raised his sword to block, and wood clashed against wood once more. Roman's speed was overwhelming, unnaturally fast. Chris attempted to create distance, but Roman gave him no room to breathe, pressing forward with a relentless barrage of strikes. Each blow came with precision and force, forcing Chris onto the defensive. The spectators were just as shocked. The soldiers murmured among themselves as Chris struggled to keep up, barely deflecting the flurry of attacks. Anxiety crept into him, defending like this was dangerous. There had to be an opening somewhere. Suddenly, Roman thrust forward. Chris leapt backward in alarm, unsure how he had been pushed back so easily. Roman raised his sword high and brought it down in a heavy overhead strike. Chris analyzed the movement instantly, such a technique carried obvious vulnerabilities. If he countered at the right moment, he could exploit them. He made his move. But Roman sidestepped at the last second. A faint smile touched Roman's lips. He had anticipated the counterattack and lured Chris into it. Realization struck Chris like a blow. Was he truly about to lose? Impossible. He refused to accept it. In desperation, he activated his magic. "Stop," the captain shouted, but it was too late. A divine aura ignited around Chris. His eyes glowed crimson, and his sword radiated an intense blue light. Even Roman looked momentarily surprised. Then a deafening impact erupted, followed by a blinding flash. Dust and smoke engulfed the training ground. Soldiers coughed violently as the air filled with debris. The Baron called out Roman's name in alarm. When the smoke began to clear, Roman was already several steps back, his expression now serious. He had crouched low and avoided the empowered strike at the last possible moment. Chris stared in disbelief, and then collapsed to the ground. Gasps rippled through the onlookers. The captain and the Baron were stunned, mouths hanging open. Roman stood over Chris, gazing down at him as though he were nothing more than a training dummy. Whispers spread among the soldiers. Someone questioned what kind of man this new deputy captain truly was, recalling his earlier spar with Roman. Another scoffed, insisting it had to be a joke. Wasn't Chris the captain's most promising student? A 2-star knight at such a young age? It was said he could sense mana after only 6 months of training. Few advanced so quickly. Yet Roman had defeated him decisively. How many ranks did he climb in just 3 years? One soldier muttered. A brown-haired knight shook his head in disbelief, wondering how everything had unfolded so quickly. Word had always been that Chris possessed extraordinary talent. Yet here he was, beaten. The captain approached the fallen knight and told him the session was over. Chris, exhausted and drenched in sweat, struggled to his feet. He was breathing heavily, trembling from overexertion. Still, he insisted they continue. He wiped his face and begged for another round. The captain observed him carefully. Despite his natural gifts, Chris trained harder than anyone else. Equal to his peers in effort, yet far ahead in ability. The captain smiled faintly. There was no denying it, Chris was a genius. Yet moments earlier, Roman had struck him down. Shock still lingered across the training ground. The Baron demanded an explanation. How could a 2-star Aura Knight, Dmitri's pride, fall so easily? The captain himself stammered in disbelief. Just a month ago, Roman had been nothing but a troublesome idler. It took years of grueling discipline to achieve such mastery. Yet Roman fought as if he had trained his entire life. It's not possible, the captain muttered. Then he corrected himself. It was possible. Do not be surprised, he said firmly. Mr. Roman is a true genius. Roman, meanwhile, stood quietly, lost in thought. He replayed the fight in his mind, how he could read Chris's movements, anticipate his intentions, even predict his next strike. By this world's standards, Chris's record was impressive. But compared to the warriors Roman once knew, it was lacking. Even the weakest dark fighters from his past would surpass him. Still, the surge of mana Chris unleashed had caught his attention. That power intrigued him. Suddenly, the Baron burst into laughter, breaking the heavy silence. He looked around proudly at the stunned soldiers. He is my son, he declared with delight. My eldest son is a master of the blade. Turning to the captain, he admitted he should have realized it sooner. Justice and reward must be earned, and Roman had proven himself. The Baron announced that Roman could ask for anything. Roman responded calmly. In 6 months, he would depart for the battlefield. The previous marriage arrangement had already been annulled, there was no reason to delay. When asked whether he wanted assistance regarding the summons, Roman declined. He only requested the right to choose the men who would accompany him. Verona appeared, questioning whether he truly intended to leave so soon. The Baron closed his eyes thoughtfully and agreed. Matters concerning his military service would be arranged accordingly. Since Roman had finally revealed his true capability, how could he refuse? Roman smiled, and then made an unexpected request. He wanted Chris to teach him Aura. Later, in the infirmary, a battered Chris listened in disbelief. The captain stood beside him and confirmed it was the Baron's order. Chris protested weakly. After using Aura so recklessly, he had collapsed and only just regained consciousness. His head throbbed, and his body ached. If you refuse, the captain warned bluntly, you will lose your head. Grinding his teeth, Chris accepted. When the captain hinted that Roman might possess hidden techniques, perhaps the same secret that had elevated him to 3-star knighthood, Chris's eyes widened. Could it be true? If so, teaching Roman might reveal something extraordinary. He nodded firmly. He would not back down. By the next day, rumors flooded the castle. The deputy captain, a 2-star Aura Knight, had been defeated. An elderly man approached Roman and spoke quietly about Aura. From what he understood, the power Chris used was indeed mana, but its manifestation resembled something else. Roman walked to the window as he considered this. In this land, they call it mana, the elder explained. But what Chris released, it felt like a flash of chi. Roman reflected on the strike. In Mirim, chi was wielded differently, refined, disciplined, optimized. Here, what they called aura seemed inefficient, riddled with flaws. Why did they not apply it as it should be used? A faint smile appeared on his face. If he mastered this world's mana properly, if he reshaped it with the principles he already knew, then its power would far exceed what anyone imagined. Tomorrow, he would begin. Chris admitted impatiently that he was eager to begin. The sun blazed overhead, flooding the lawn with light as he and Roman faced one another across the grass. Chris studied Roman carefully, suspicion written plainly across his face. Roman returned the look with the same calm expression he always wore, then released a quiet sigh. Chris frowned. What is that supposed to mean? They had not even started yet. Chris spoke evenly. He would begin with the fundamentals. Aura, he explained, was merely one aspect of mana. Both mages and knights utilized mana, but they handled it differently. To a mage, mana was gathered and stored within a constructed circle, an internal formation designed to accumulate and refine energy. Knights, in contrast, dispersed mana throughout their entire bodies. Instead of concentrating it in a single core like magicians, they circulated it through flesh and bone, reinforcing themselves physically. He briefly mentioned Emperor Alexandro, the so-called innovator, who had pioneered the method of strengthening the human body through mana distribution. The emperor, a gray-haired elder crowned in crimson robes, had discovered how to spread mana evenly across the body rather than confining it within a circle. Aura, Chris continued, was the instantaneous release of that distributed mana. When activated, it surged outward in a flash, dramatically increasing strength. He demonstrated by channeling power into his hand, energy flared and spilled from his palm with overwhelming force. History, he said, was not essential. What mattered was aptitude. Only 1 in 1,000 walked the path of a knight. Only 1 in 10,000 became a mage. The first prerequisite for either was the ability to sense mana. Most failed at this stage. It had taken Chris 6 months to feel it for the first time, a respectable pace. Even sensing it within a year was considered good. Ultimately, everything depended on talent. Roman then looked directly at him. "First," he said, "you must feel it." Chris nodded and prepared to explain the sensation, though inwardly he was unsettled. He had assumed that Roman's earlier victory was a fluke. Swordsmanship talent and mana affinity were entirely different things. Today, Roman would learn that reality. At least, that was what Chris believed. Roman, however, had already sensed the mana of this world long ago. He had even condensed a small amount within himself. According to conventional wisdom, mana accumulated in the lower abdomen. But blindly accepting common sense was the shortest path to mediocrity. Still, he decided to follow their method, for now. That's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more. We'll see you in the next one.